This is a story I'm not happy about. It's unfortunate when I hear about radio stations that are so good and have been popular for so many years. And not just that, a station that also plays to a different audience, a different format, a format that unfortunately has been kind of just not been in the mainstream for a long time. It's still prominent. I mean, there's a lot of artists that are still putting out rock music, but this is indicative of a dying format. I'm just wondering what happened here. But again, it's just saddening to see. But again, this is a corporate owned station that went through so many different changes. But then again, you had a certain amount of people that came from a previous regime before it became corporate, before 1996, and the Telecommunications Act, which changed everything for radio altogether and basically destroyed it over time. It'll be 25 years coming up of the anniversary of this horrible bill that really the deregulation of the radio industry hurt forever, and for media on top of that. Let's just be honest, because I think media as well, because of this act which was put into play, really just ruined everything. Because having the corporate people with their meaty claws to get onto any kind of media entity that was doing well beforehand, we're seeing the devolving and the destruction of all these great entertainment platforms that we had. And KROQ was one of the iconic radio stations, much like the progressive rock stations of the 70s. This station in the 90s and the 2000s was synonymous, even the 80s, was synonymous with rock, as the name says, if you spell it out. So the station is on life support. This is according to Variety Magazine. This is a couple days ago, but I didn't get a chance to read about this yet, but I wanted to point this across. So now, one of the songs that KROQ played on March 8th, prior to the pandemic, was Post Malone's Circles, which is a big pop song. Even though Post Malone might be considered and construed as an alternative song or an alternative artist in some cases, if not for his songs mainstreaming in the pop. But he's a pop artist now more than anything else. So now, as of March 1st, it never got played on the station. 7 days later, 32 times they played it. At the end of March, 65 times. And over the last 3 months, it's become the station's second most played track behind Billie Eilish's Everything I Wanted and Shade's Trampoline, which is a good song, by the way. I like those songs all together. But for a rock station, this is where alternative is coming to play. And the rock format is lost its identity, basically. And whoever was rock oriented went to country, to be honest with you. So now, Post Malone's arrival comes after several changes were made. Kevin Weatherly, who was the original program director for the station, 28 years on the job, on the heels of a proposed pay cut, which would have been 30% of his original pay, he left for a position at Spotify, which he'll start in September. And then one of the hosts of the morning show, Kevin and Bean, Kevin Ryder, who was there for 3 decades running that station. And that station was a mainstay morning show for many years. And then the decision to blow up the morning show brought some consequences, because the morning show brought in a lot of audience, as opposed to when you don't have that much, personality and that much time for somebody to really get over as a talent, as a personality, and getting a chance to engage with the audience. And it only happens during the morning show. Well, then the rest of the ratings are going to go down because you're relying on music, which if you're not playing any music that's really ahead of time or trending, that will be enough for people to stay around to the commercials. Well, that's not working. So here's what happened. KROQ's ratings went down almost half. And this Entercon-owned radio station would then go behind its alternative rock competitor, Star 98.7 KYSR, the iHeartRadio affiliate. It would then drop below that. But KROQ, for years, was always the top rock station in the market, and the top rock station in the country, as for a matter of fact. So they lost half of their listenership in the weeks following the decision to kink. Now, actually, here's the thing. Kevin and Bean was originally on, but then Kevin was running the show by himself. And then this show with Kevin was pulled off the air. And this is the people that were on there just before. So now, KROQ was changing and leading the charge with the new manager, Mike Kaplan. And he was basically called Mike the Show Killer, which was a tongue-in-cheek nickname he was given. And now sources are saying that circles can be being added to the playlist immediately mandated that all talent can no longer refer to the station as KROQ, but they must use the call letters KROQ almost exclusively. Can't even call it KROQ now because they're not rock anymore. So here's what he says, Kaplan. The very sound of the word rock offends him. He says it's not only antiquated, but borderline toxic. When did rock music become toxic? This is the music of rebellious, angst-ridden teenagers and 20-year-olds and college students, and honestly, some of the best music we ever have, some of the most iconographic political statements, movements. I mean, just everything. There was so much music that came from rock music that was so popular. And to lose one last station that identified with rock music, the music that we have today, all begats rock and roll. And, not A-N-D, rock and roll. From everybody that we had that precedes this, to say that, okay, we can't even use the name rock and roll anymore, now it's a taboo subject. So what, you're going to go against what Alan Freed said in the mid-50s? Really? This was the music of an evolutionary generation for generations. This is the music of progressivism, right? This is the music that people progress from. For everything that we have, rock always had a great identity and a movement and a moment. So rock equals death, says the station insider of Management's View. Rock equals death. This is why the radio industry is tanking right now. This is pathetic. There is nobody right now supporting rock music to the mainstream. No one. Radio was at least trying to do some of that. And by the way, we don't have any concerts right now. So the Rolling Stones or U2 or any other big rock stars that are out there, they can't perform. And they don't have the support of the record labels to put out new projects to keep people up and going. I mean, there's new artists, where are they going to go play? And there's no MTV. And Spotify, Apple, and Pandora and all those, they're not helping support those. If the music cannot be heard, can anybody hear it? It's like, does a tree fall in the field? Does it make a sound? This is where we are now. Rock should be most importantly, rock music was a great catalyst to break the balance, the pendulum of what music was. If you're tired of all the pop music that sounds the same and sounds sugar saccharine and saying it sounds the same thing, and trap music with the same fucking beat, then where's rock music to change the role? If you don't like the EDM music, you don't like all this, where are the guitars? Where's the instruments? Because as far as I know, growing up, 80s, 90s, we always had rock music, and it continued to evolve. So if I was growing up as a kid, like 9, 10 years old, we have Van Halen and Rat, and, then all the hair bands started coming across after that, and Judas Priest, and, come on. And AC/DC, come on. That was a great change to what we have. We're not going to just hear in the 80s Prince or Janet Jackson or, what have you. I mean, that's the whole point. And then rock in the 90s, even more so. It took a little bit of a break in the early 90s because there wasn't so much of that, because it was an evolution. Then we get iconic groups like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and, Soundgarden. I mean, come on. Look at all we have from there. And then into the 2000s, you had Rage Against the Machine, and you had, seriously. There was just so much good music that came from all this. Just saying. Guns N' Roses, Jesus. Look at what you had. All this different music that, again, you hear younger listeners aren't going back to these songs. They go back to the Beatles. They go back to the Stones. They go back to all this. They go back to Led Zeppelin. They'll go back and listen because they'll go back and listen to what was before. But nobody hears what there is right now. Think about it. 3 Days Grace might still be out there. Disturbed's out there. Puddle of Mud's still out there. But are anybody listening to them right now? Are there any songs you're getting right now that are going to make some big change? No, because nobody's playing them. And radio's not supporting them at all. The only radio stations that do are classic rock stations, or stations that are playing the album-oriented rock. So they're just trying to be the supporter of rock in general. But that's an older audience. As far as I know, I thought KROQ was trying to go after a younger audience, but alternative is not even what it's close to what it was. Okay, I'm sorry. Imagine Dragons, no. 21 Pilot, 21, yeah, 21 Pilots, no, no. Surfaces, no. There's some artists that are being put in the alternative range. Now, Billie Eilish, I guess you could say she's alternative, sure. I mean, there's again, look at the songs they're putting right now into who is part of the rock era now. And again, this is not rock, not honestly. So new titles were shifted after Weatherly left, and the additions included Powfoo's Coffee for Your Head, Deathbed with Biabadoobie, 24K Golden, City of Angels, Tame Impala's Lost in Yesterday, and Ash's Moral of the Story. Okay, out of those songs, 24K Golden, it's a rock pop song, and Coffee for Your Head, it's the new alternative sound, but really it's just a song that it really doesn't have a space, but it's crossing over. The truth is, all these songs I just mentioned right here should be on a mainstream radio station. These are top 40 songs. Tame Impala, they're very popular in the alternative sense, but really, they're not rock. They play guitar, but they're not necessarily rock. The alternative kind of played into some of this as well, but really, some of these stations that say that they're playing around now, a classic alternative station, you hear these songs and they're saying now it's turning into a classic alternative station, leaning on heritage artists and not claiming new acts like LA-based star Eilish for themselves. So now, Kaplan here, he says that he did clarify the mandate of the Voices station's call letters. He says it's used interchangeably. Quote, rock music is part of what we do. It's part of alternative, but it's not only part of alternative. We're not just looking to play 4 white dudes in a band. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? What the hell is that? What was Living Color? I mean, come on. What are you talking about? That's such a stupid phrase to say. That's just a stupid point to make. Just because there happened to be certain artists that were out there that might not check all the boxes of diversity, it doesn't matter. I don't think anybody mattered what it was, because there's just certain music for certain types, and that really changed the way through different levels of everybody. I mean, that just it actually perpetuated through all different areas of people, races, creeds, cultures. It didn't matter. Rock music you hear anywhere. I mean, look, you want to hear like music like in Latin America, man, they were all listening to and they started making their own pop, Rock and Español, Maná and Juanes and all these different artists. They're really good. And Soda Stereo and all these others, right? The thing is, you would have these artists, and then you would have other countries, other cultures that would do the same type of music. Europe, there's a lot of different groups that were different, right? Asia, the same thing. There was just something different. 4 white dudes in a band. That is so ignorant right there of this corporate tool. This piece of shit right here. Just saying. Whether it's Billie Eilish or Lana Del Rey or rappers making alternative tracks such as 24K Golden and Dominic Fike, we're bringing together what millennials and Gen Z fans want. No, that's what Spotify does. That's what Apple, Pandora, the streamers are doing that. And the fact that you're also not playing them current, you're not playing them up to date. You're changing the identity of the station completely from a different audience. You're going to just change that overnight? So when you're asking about the standbys like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters, and Sublime, you'll see that all the songs are getting changed up. So now you have songs that have been playing for a long time, and some of the songs are being played now 60% less in the last 12 weeks. And it's just, I mean, it's sad to see all this is being said. This guy just basically just wants to just obliterate this whole lineup. Maybe who was brought in to go and just kill the station because they wanted to make it something else. So we're not a singular focus where we get pigeonholed and lack diverse options. Diverse options. No, diverse options means you have different stations with different tastes. People don't like to go to a buffet with different flavors and different types of food because they're not going to make it well. Make one thing you're good at. If people know to listen to this station for rock, You're not even changing the fucking name of the station, but you're deciding to go and create something that it's not what this is. And other stations have gone through the same way, and it's so stupid. So if you want to listen to older artists, you can go find them on, one of the other older stations playing jack music, which is like a hodgepodge of all different like 80s and 90s artists. But that means it's not going to be in one place. So there are groups like Blink 182, Weezer, and Green Day, which still put out new music, by the way. They're part of the fabric of who we are for a while. But others have taken that step to a different format for a different target consumer. So they're too old. Got it. He also, Weatherly then says, this is where what also is being said. Kevin Weatherly talks about this. Listeners absolutely expect rock to be a significant sound on the station. And over the last 5 to 10 years, the appetite for new alternative music with our core audience was not as strong as it had been previously. There haven't been as many big hits that have stuck around. I wish we could play as much new music as possible, but that was not what our audience wanted. They were leaning more, alternative is leaning more pop, and expectations from our audience were more rock leaning. So you'd want to hear more Foo Fighters, Linkin Park, Muse, Killers, Green Day. And now, one thing that was a problem with KROQ is also, you're stuck to a very narrow playlist when you're playing older music. So it would be the same 90 songs every day. And that might be one that was done. But then again, that was an audience music tested format. These are the 90 songs we're going to play. We're not going to go ahead and differentiate and deviate from the system. So yeah, people are going to get tired out. Well, they can go listen to a full album somewhere else. But the corporate radio people don't get it. They don't get it. They don't want to get it. They'd rather listen to what their constituents are saying, their advertisers are saying, their researchers, their consultants are saying. They want to do that. Horrible. So now you have 2 months later, the station is constantly deleting angry comments on the social media. It's censoring its commenters on Facebook in particular. Listeners en masse write how they stopped tuning in. One says, quote, I have not listened even 1 minute after they removed it, and it was removed from my presets. And that's a tame example. And there are others that are more explicit, not hiding their anger from station management and owner Entercom. The regional president of Entercom, who includes oversight of KROQ, says he felt the need to immediately yank Kevin in the Morning off the air despite the expected backlash. Quote, we've done a lot of research. Your research is bullshit. A lot of strategy meetings around all this. So it wasn't this knee-jerk, hey, it's the pandemic, no one will see what will happen decision. So the station is now more or less retroactively proclaiming that the show died once Gene Bean Baxter left. And that's Kevin and Bean, who had been around, again, 30 plus years on this station. Now, things happen and people get upset. We certainly hope to win people back that left us. We expect the ratings hit. You can't pull off someone of Kevin's stature and not take some sort of hit. And we knew that. It was a tough call to make, but one we felt it was necessary. They didn't want to pay. Let's just be honest. They also didn't want to pay the contract because the guys have been there for so long and they're not basically tenured. And this is the whole thing with corporate radio on top of that. All those jobs are subjected to be people to be let go. Contracts don't matter anymore. And the money that has to be put in those stations, on those shows, they don't want to do anything else either. And these are the problems that we have. A KROQ staffer says, no one had a better term for it than Kevin Weatherly. He was producer on the Kevin B program. He foresaw this and said it wouldn't happen overnight, but KROQ would succumb to death by 1,000 cuts. Now, Weatherly did not recall the specific remark when asked, but again, the buckle was a decade-long decline. It can be attributed to uncertainty in the radio business. The audience is pivoting to streaming platforms, podcasts, satellite radio, and other forms of audio entertainment, and a splintering of the alternative rock format. Where guitar-based groups of the 90s and early aughts are in a sort of format purgatory, not entirely a home on classic or modern rock, some of it was also self-inflicted. And that's another problem. Classic rock will not play these songs. So where are you going to play them? And there are no Generation X type stations that are doing this either. Because again, you're trying not to play older music because you're trying to keep to a younger audience, I would imagine. So now, in this here, The world famous KROQ was originally coined as a joke, and it was done by KROQ jock Freddie Snakeskin. That was when radio was radio, right? And again, they were doing all this stuff that they did. They were able to help introduce the Los Angeles audience to the likes of the Ramones, Blondie, the Runaways, the Go-Go's, bands from the UK, and this radio station did all of that, and it was amazing. This is one of the stations, by the way, that Mel Karmazin actually ran, who was one of the guys that helped to get Howard Stern where he was today, and also did a lot of great stations and learned from a lot of great good people in his time. KROQ made future TV stars. By the way, radio makes TV stars. Jimmy Kimmel, Carson Daly, Adam Carolla, and Dr. Drew Pinsky all came from KROQ. They all started in radio first. Look where they are all today. Look at that. That's what happens. And then again, 1990s, you had alternative music that was just thriving. KROQ, because of groups like Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins were on the or front and center on their playlist. That station was making $68 million in 2005. No station even makes half of that right now of any station around the country. I think WTOP in Washington, D.C. makes like $30 million a year. That's about it. And there you go. They were making money. You're not going to see that kind of money anymore. And that's their problem. Daniel Glass, CEO of Glassnut Records, home to alternative perennials like Mumford & Sons in Phoenix, put it this way. The best DJs in the world, quote, are those who aren't afraid to clear the dance floor. But with money came the need to play it safe and not alienate the audience. That's the problem. You're beholden to the ratings and you notch it down. Well, the ratings are bullshit too. Because you're not tapping into a new audience. You're not bringing anybody on board. So KROQ's audiences aged. It faced a catch-22, attempt to stay relevant to younger audiences or alienate the core listenership. Well, then what you do is you take that station and you move it somewhere else, or you start off a younger audience on a new station. Why can't you do that? But no, they couldn't figure that out. They didn't know what they were going to do. Now, here's the real crux of what's going on when it comes to radio in general, why all these stations are still playing to what they're playing for. Because here's the idea. Tilla says, quote, keeping the older demo has its upside. Discretionary income, great for advertisers, far more loyal to radio. But over time, this demo will diminish, and if you haven't backfilled with new young listeners, the ratings will suffer. If you bite the bullet and play younger, polarizing, trendy music, you can jettison the older listeners in favor of a younger audience. But the irony of the latter plan is that younger people are less inclined to listen to terrestrial radio. So in the end, you're stuck with an older audience and more Red Hot Chili Peppers. Right. Radio has to evolve, much like everything else. Listen, there were times where certain radio stations were not able to go ahead and keep an audience when it was a heritage station. They had to evolve. They had to change with time. Well, they're not doing that right now, are they? That's what they're not figuring out. However, the quote, the old debate of more music, more talk has been going on forever. I'm pro personality. I brought in Jimmy Kimmel, Carson Daly, Stryker, Nicole Alvarez, and Kat Corbett. I recently put Klein on the afternoon with Stryker. That was a point of differentiation. If everyone's playing the same music, what sets us apart? Personality. That's the difference maker. Absolutely right. You can't just get people to listen to music and just keep putting commercials around it. You have that personality that drives people to listen in and succumb to listening to gobs and gobs of commercials. You have to do that. So that's what's going on. And I talked about TikTok on another video, and here's another thing that's being said here. Kaplan also took over KROQ, which was Howard Stern's old station. He changed that around to the alternative format it is today, and is it doing any good? No, not really. Middle of the pack. So he's taking the same formula he did in New York to go for LA. Well, that's how stupid he is. You think the audiences are the same thing? No, they're not. Absolutely not. But again, he put in action for both stations to mirror each other's playlists, an unorthodox move. Kaplan acknowledges the history of alternative in New York doesn't have the same depth that the format claims in Southern California. But in his view, quote, we're not seeing a lot of regional hits to speak of anymore because things are so omnipresent. Whether it's an artist breaking out of TikTok or suburbia, we've got to be on the pulse for that and have to be inclusive and diversified as the audience and the artists are today. No, the point is that you take artists that are actually prominent within the market they're in and make them a big deal. I mean, if they're going to go play a concert or play something where they're going to be playing in a venue, that could be a different story. But sorry, streaming also can identify which cities or which states are people are listening to music from a different market. That actually does happen. It's not just regional and global. No, stupid. So anyway, status quo went out the window. COVID-19 came up, became a SoCal problem. So either which way, radio did supposedly increase according to a recent study by Havas. And again, you just see that the KROQ audience and who they should be. According to this Intercom radio suit, he says, quote, the KROQ audience should be about 28, 29 years old and ethnically diverse. What? How would they have money? Or they want to hear the music. You cannot play to everybody, okay? It's like different flavors of ice cream. You might have a place that might be ice cream, but the thing is, not everybody's going to want the same flavors. There's a reason why formats were played. And if you're going to do that, then become a mainstream radio station, right? If you don't want to do the rock format, then change it up. But the whole point is that what worked for radio all these years was that when you had songs that were in different charts, whether it was a rock song or a pop song or a soul song or a rap song or whatever, then those songs would cross over, right? Pop music or the mainstream radio stations, the top 40, should be diverse, not rock music. Rock music should be in its own lane. Play in your own lane, and when there are artists that are going to be diverse that will go to the main chart, that's when you see diversity. But the rock audience is going to be what they want, and it's not 4 white dudes in a band, you stupid piece of shit. Anyways. Long story, but I got more into this now. Again, they should be leaning towards new music. They should be the person that's at Coachella checking out all the new music tents, not just sitting in front of the main stage to hear all the big artists. They're very musically driven. They're coming up to us for entertainment. Okay, but you're not playing new music. You're not even trying. And if this station doesn't need to do it because they're a heritage rock station, do not do it. What you do is you keep your current audience and you find new songs that can mold into this and find their way in. That's what you do. There's stations in Orlando, stations in Fort Myers that I live in. There's a KROQ there that's been around forever. And there's the new 101.9 alternative that's in Orlando, WJRR, right? So they're playing a lot of new stuff, but they're playing older stuff, right? They're trying to kind of mold in some new songs, but you can only take so many new songs that get up there and try to build them up. But this is because now there's not a lot of stations that are playing this music in the first place. And there's not a lot of this music that's getting big on the Spotify. So you just got to play with what you have. You could try to introduce new songs into the demographic and try to get people to listen in, but some of them are not going to do as well. Because also rock music, if you're going to have new rock, I mean, it's got to be as good as the old stuff. And that's really tough to kind of compete with these days. And there are other challenges they talk about, that the station owns 235 radio stations, and they're having challenges in every major market. So there's economic challenges. Again, they don't want to spend the money on personalities. They're going to change to putting music on that we might be something different. And here's the thing, is that there are other ways where you can see that other stations, this rock station might not even last that long, and it probably won't. 30 most played songs according to Media Base. Again, how many of those are real rock songs? They're not. This is your absolutely standard alternative rock, alternative music list. No rock next to it at all, for the most part. And that's what goes on. These are the problems that we have. This station was really great. I actually heard a lot of their stuff. They actually had a HD2 channel that put all like 80s, 90s stuff. It was fantastic. And you know what? The world famous KROQ, it's going to be a dying breed. But again, this is what radio does. A station that was making, in 2005, was one of the top billing stations in the #2 market in the country. And just like that, some little corporate action. and watch it fall. I don't know if KROQ survives much longer, but it's like this story says. They're probably not rock. They're probably not wrong. The end of the world, it could be gone. They might just change it altogether. Might as well just make it a format change altogether. Don't call it KROQ. Let it just die what it's supposed to be. Rock equals death. Well, corporate creates that death. They're the damn Grim Reaper.